Let's get going. It just turned 9 o'clock and it's August 14th. I'll call this meeting to order. Will you please join us in pledging allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris, roll call, please.
Yes, Division 1.
Here.
Division 2.
Here.
Division 3. Here. Division 4.
Here.
Division 5.
Here. Thank you. So now we have public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Do you have any public comment for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Thank you. We have requests that everyone speak up so that the audience can hear us better. Command voice. All right. We're to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
All right, any public comment for the consent agenda? Any comment? Roll call, please.
Division 2.
Aye.
Division 3.
Aye.
Division 4.
Aye.
Division 1.
Yes.
Division 5.
Yes. All right, we're to the workshop items, and this is the PG&E update workshop. And thank you for coming. I understand that you may not have an update, but that is news in itself.
Always an update. Thank you for the opportunity. Tyler Kovich, representing PG&E. Couple items on the good news front. Since the 26th, 27th, we've restored Spalding 1, and we've been flowing water into the Drum Canal and thus the South Yuba Canal safely, reliably, efficiently. So we're getting flows down to Scotts Flat, and we're getting flows down to Rollins, and the operations teams have been coordinating between both PCWA and NID effectively to balance flow and needs to support the community. So good news on that.
What is the CFS coming out of that right now?
Around 450 CFS, but we're starting to lose.
Well, I had heard that. I just wondered if it had changed.
It fluctuates a little bit on a daily basis depending on what's going on, but it generally is around there.
Yep, pretty steady.
If I remember right from the last meeting, typically this time of year it'd be 650?
Maximum in the canal is around 800, so it's just dependent on demand downstream and system conditions. But we are restricted to the 450 CFS through the unit under current conditions.
That's due to only one horn availability.
Right. That's correct.
And
It's
then,
a few months to learn all these details.
yeah, and then remember, we're spilling some of the water over into the South Yuba to start filling Scotts.
About 60,
Yeah,
60 CFS.
it's about 60 CFS. It goes between 58 and 60. They're doing some additional measuring today.
Better than we thought for.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say it was gonna,
The testing came out and the flow through the unit is about 50 CFS greater than, we were kind of being conservative on our estimate up front until the testing was complete.
So is Scott Flat holding its own, going down, or?
It's going down. We do have some slides if the board would like to see them. We can show you. You want to pop those slides up, Chris? Learn to Zoom. Chip can come up. Yeah, we'll start with Scott's and then we'll move over to Rollins.
Yeah, good morning, Board. Chip Close, Director of Water Operations. We have updated this slide to show you real time where we're at. And as you can see, the red line was our initial forecast. The green line is what we're actually living. And the good news is, as you can see, the green line was tracking with or just above the red line for most of the beginning of irrigation season. But then we did get that Horn 1 returned to us, which got flows into the South Yuba Canal a little bit earlier than we anticipated, and it is helping separate those two lines. In other words, Scotts Flat is looking a little bit better than we initially anticipated. We expect those lines to continue to slowly diverge a little bit but basically, the demands on Scotts Flat are higher than the imports we can bring in, even if everything was in normal operation. So don't be alarmed, Scotts Flat will continue to drop. That is a normal scenario. But there's your forecast for it, and it is looking a little bit better than we initially thought, so that's good. On the Rollins Reservoir side,
Before you jump, what do you attribute the green line, the delta to? Is that conservation, or that's the extra water that we're putting, into the canal?
so for the beginning of the year, we were very conservative, and our demand estimates were higher than we've actually lived. So a little bit of conservation, but I think more importantly, we tried to be as conservative as we could when we did the forecast.
Okay, so there was a little bit of fat in the estimate.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
So, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
So on Scotts Flat, we have 2 more months of irrigation season, and after maybe September 15th, they'll go from, the demand goes down typically, but we're already in conservation, and so the demand is down, so you won't see much of a change in actual use.
So, yeah, I think you will, yeah.
You will.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Days become shorter, nights become cooler, people stop using as much water. We go from about 5,500 acre feet a week to about 3,000. So I expect
We should see that.
Yeah.
Good.
So, and Chip, I had a question back to the Scotts Flat too. You said, so some water is going to Scotts Flat, but there's enough to meet the demand on the Cascade?
Correct. So thankfully, PG&E was able to get us enough flow where we don't have to run the emergency siphon lane pumps anymore. And it's not what we would typically get in the Cascade, so we're still supplementing wherever we can, but we got enough now to turn off those diesel pumps, which are... That's great. Rollins Reservoir. So this one's a little bit different story. So you can see the red line again was our forecast. And again, a similar thing happened. We got return of Horn 1 a little bit sooner than we anticipated, and you can see what a difference it made. The green line there bottoms out around the end of July and just kind of flatlines. And that's what we anticipate continuing as we move forward through the rest of irrigation season. A big thank you to PCWA as well on this one, because they are still running some of their pumps, which are helping to keep Rollins just flatlined right now. The total demands on Rollins are about 420 CFS a day, maybe a little bit more than that. But with the one horn, we're getting about, 350 down into Rollins. So we're still a little bit short, but that's where PCWA's pumps are helping and keeping this reservoir flatlined. So that's where we're at. All in all, better than we anticipated, so that's the good news for today.
Thank you for good news.
Hope Tyler was worth coming here.
Yeah. Follow-up good news, we did get the heavy lift helicopter. I think we had a news release on that, the 5th and 6th. So, big hurdle, very good work by the crews and the helicopter pilot and team up there to safely get that pipe set. They are continuing to work on pushing those pieces together, welding them together, coupling them up. And we are certainly on track to finish the mid-September or possibly before, with the pipe. The unfortunate event we had, while testing Spalding Unit 2, we had some mechanical equipment fail and caused that generator to encounter an overspeed event. And we're still working through discovery on the damage there and what it's going to take to repair that. So we're not going to get water into the South Yuba pipe once it's finished. We're going to have a delay while we work on Spalding 2 damage that we discover and putting that thing back into workable condition. So
Do you have a time estimate?
I don't have a time estimate. We're going through discovery and investigation on the unit this week. We do have contract resources and engineering resources set up so that once the scope of the damage is discovered, we're ready to go. But we're not fully investigated yet.
Is that powerhouse watered right now, or is?
It was watered when we were testing it.
Uh-huh.
We have since dewatered it to allow the investigation and work to to go forward.
So that is a repair, not a replacement,
It'll be a repair of, damage that we find.
which takes longer.
It's not really like we have off-the-shelf replacement parts for this stuff. Some we have spare parts, depends on what's damaged, whether it's replace or repair.
Could you comment a little bit, because Spalding 2, I guess, has been out since 2023, and then you guys repaired the wicket gates and so on. When you were doing that, were you not able to also look at what the problem that we now have today? Or, I mean, it's like, can you guys do two things at once? That's kind of what I'm saying.
The equipment that caused our overspeed event has been operating historically, I guess, without issue. And it's not a system that we had an issue with or were expecting a problem with. It was something new that we encountered when we went through the testing process. So we did all the repairs to the wicket gates, and in our attempts to bring that unit back and test it, this is a new problem that caused the event.
Just like to recommend or remind everyone that this is a workshop, so if in the audience you have questions or online, all you have to do. All right, so we have Mike's iPad. Mike, you're on.
Yes, I just want to clarify on Spalding 2, with the need for repair on the generator, is there any bypass or pressure relief valve that can be used to deliver water while the generator is being repaired?
We do have the ability to bypass through the PRV there, but we cannot bypass through the PRV while making repairs. The unit has to be depressurized and dewatered for the crews to safely work on it.
Good question, Mike.
My question.
Yeah.
If you want to identify yourself, that's fine. You're not required to. We're good.
So how much longer will it be until we have kind of a summary of the repair schedule and when we can get flows going again?
I would hope that we have a pretty good report from our maintenance team and a schedule from our project team in a couple of weeks. I'm hoping that the maintenance team does all their investigations and inspections this week. We get that scope to our contract partner and our project team, and they'll hopefully be able to start disassembly, repairs, and have a good schedule for us. So
They're in there now.
our maintenance team has been in there all last week and is in there currently.
Now, is that a 24/7 operation, or is that?
At this time, no, it is not. We can consider that option, but we are still discovering the extent of the damage.
For me, that's the choke point, and that should be 24/7. I mean, if my crops go dry.
So I understand your concern there and take that into account.
Jennifer, on October 16th, how much, what CFS is going through the canal that's attributed, that is being fed by Spalding 2 in general?
In normal, it'd be, well, we start dialing it back. This year, because of how low Scott's Flat is, we still maximize the flows, which is about 85 CFS. So that's what I was gonna ask Chip to speak to, is this new issue will likely cause additional water supply impacts next year and play into the determination of when the second horn gets repaired. And the reason being is that Scott's Flat will not refill on its own because its watershed is so small. So it's imperative that we continue to be able to put water into Scott's Flat. So if they cannot repair Spalding 2 and keep Spalding 1 going, and we still need water going down the drum so we can spill into the South Yuba.
So one or the other.
Yeah, so we have some decision points coming, but it's really going to be dependent on the schedule for the repair of Spalding 2.
So let me parrot this back. You can chime in. So what I heard was in typical conditions, we would be pushing a max of 85 CFS down there, but we would also be pushing 650 on Spalding 1,
Well,
if everything was fixed.
correct.
And-
You usually start ratcheting it back, but yes.
And what we're looking at is losing the 85 and being restricted to 450 because we can't fix the second horn because Spalding 2 is broken.
Yeah, so that's exactly, you're correct. The essential problem is that instead of being able to transition, so say Spalding 2 came back online, then we start pumping water down the South Yuba Canal, and then we can take that full 450 into Rollins, and we have the 85 going into Scotts Flat. Now we're still sharing that 450 between Rollins and Scotts Flat for a longer period. So that's the fundamental impact.
So this plays into why the outage for Horn 2 will more than likely take place in the spring instead of the fall now. We're gonna need the fall months to maximize whatever water we can into the South Yuba Canal to try to refill Rollins throughout the fall and then through the winter. We're gonna need as much as we can. We can't take any outage. So.
Yeah, my concern there, I think that that's the right plan, but my concern there is hopefully we have good snow, and then how do we do this at that point?
Yeah.
Before April 15th.
I appreciate that, and the teams have gathered together to have updates on a regular basis to make a go or no-go call on that second horn. If we have an abysmal winter and we just don't refill these reservoirs, we may have to pump for a year.
Yeah, so Rollins typically refills and spills 9 out of 10 years.
Yeah.
We end up in that 1 year time period that it's not refilling. There's no way we're doing the second horn next year. We would do it after the 2025 irrigation season. We just won't have enough water.
So when do we start looking at winter water?
So
We're not going to deliver fall water, but we do deliver up to 40,000 acre feet of winter water. So we'll start looking at that as we go forward.
So, winter water is a little bit different scenario in that we pull from storage only for about the first month, and then after that, the rains hit and we live basically on runoff. So it's not as detrimental to our Scotts Flat and Rollins reservoirs. Curtailing fall water will help with that tremendously. So that was a good call and part of the emergency declaration. We are also putting out a reminding them of mandatory conservation measures and that those haven't been rescinded yet. We still need conservation to help with refill, and just putting a little reminder out there.
So back to the winter water, what if we have the 1 out of 9 scenario for winter water, the dry year?
Unfortunately, it's hard to shut off a winter water customers because they are in-home.
Oh, I mean, we would have to supply it, so back when we had real drought, we had winter water
We did.
runoff.
We did.
Okay.
And keep in mind, even in the drought years, and next year may be different, but even during the drought years, we had Rollins refill.
Right.
We're hopeful we'll get that again. It's Scotts Flat that is basically the biggest worry for us at this point.
We have, Marike, you've been patiently waiting, so you're on. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. Do you have a sense of over all the farmers, like the irrigation customers that had to cut back because of this situation? Do you have a sense over your whole area of service how much the damage is for the farmers?
You mean economic damage?
Yeah, there's currently no mandatory restrictions on watering of agricultural crops. So I don't know that we could directly attribute any damage to agricultural uses. There likely could be associated damage with ornamental landscape watering. But Chip, have we pulled the numbers on raw water conservation?
Yeah, yes, we have had conservation. It's not as great as the 20% we asked for. Given the kind of summer we had,
Yeah.
that was surprising.
Right.
It's extremely hot. We have seen about a 5% reduction on the agricultural water side as well as the treated water side. Both of them are on par at about 5%.
Yeah, well, outdoor water use is largely dependent on weather. So you get these long, hot, dry spells, and also with the fire season where we've seen numerous small fires pop up, people are a little hesitant to stop even watering some of the ornamental landscaping and turf.
Yeah, we had helicopters in our ponds this week.
Yeah, it's a scary situation, so.
It's scary, but it also, goes to how vital this is.
Yeah. Thank God you had your pond.
Exactly.
I could just answer her question, and from a farmer perspective, that the books won't be done until December.
Yeah.
The crops won't be in, sales won't be calculated.
I do know that some of the rice farmers down in South Sutter Territory did file for insurance claims early because of their reduced allocation, but that's not the same kind of situation as we're in.
30% of the rice farmers didn't plant
Down in,
everywhere. Because it was a big crop last year and the price dropped.
yeah.
So figure out if it was a lack of water or just playing the
Market.
insurance game.
Market forces.
I would add for that question as well, Rika, is that in coordination with OES, both Glasser and Nevada County, we haven't seen any indication that there's a economic consideration or concern from communities and the farmers in the area. So from that perspective and an economic perspective, OES, there's really nothing there.
And Marike, I haven't seen it either or heard of it yet. And we're going 100% plus actually on our crops. Yes.
Right, that's Sierra Harvest. I just wanted to follow up on her question, and apologies if I was out of town if I missed this update. The mandatory canal rotation, those ceased when that ceased, okay. And so, and none of you heard any sort of negative impacts to farm businesses when the canal rotations were happening?
No, and they were minimized significantly because we were able to start getting water into the cascade.
Schiff and the crew really came through and found extra water. And so in our ditch, it went down for a day and went right back up because they found it and was able to get it in. So it worked out. Mike, I see you're back on.
Check comment. It's often hard to understand the presenter because that microphone seems to cut out. I don't know if there's some noise cancellation put onto it, but yeah, it's often hard to understand the presenter. The board members are fine, but that presenter microphone seems to have an issue. Another question, related to Spalding 1 and 2. In the situation where Spalding 2 and the pipe are repaired and Spalding 2 is fully operational, and then we get to the point where we take Spalding 1 out of commission to do the second horn, will there be a dividing of the Spalding 2 flows into Bear River and into Scotts Flat? And what will the capacities be on that?
Spalding 2 is rated for approximately 200 CFS, but the pipe itself bottlenecks it down to about 130 CFS. And then the maximum at the top of the South Yuba Canal is just shy of 100. So assuming we get the maximum, we could put about 100 into the South Yuba Canal and the remaining 30-ish could be spilled to the Bear River. And that could fluctuate based on NID's demand into the canal. Less demand in South Yuba Canal, we could push more water into the Bear River during the follow-up outage.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Are we still sending the environmental flows that we were sending? I mean, we were sending the FERC level flows into the Bear River from Rollins?
We are meeting current FERC required in-stream flows.
I'd like to follow up on that. If we had future FERC requirements, how much worse would this be?
Asking for an emergency
Yeah.
variance.
Yeah.
You can request
Asking
variance.
for emergency variance from FERC. Yeah.
That's
Comforting.
Would we get it?
I can't imagine that we
You
wouldn't.
need God.
Yeah, you would need to justify it.
Yeah.
You can't create an emergency, but under these circumstances, I'm confident we would.
depends on who's at the switch. I get the decision.
I have one last comment. I just wanted to thank staff for the forward-looking, second horn details. I asked for that last time. Appreciate you being prepared with that. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will be continuing our twice-a-week coordination at the operational level, and as new developments come up, we'll communicate those at that level first, and then continue to provide updates to the board as they request. And we are actively continuing planning of the second outage, and I think as Chip mentioned, we have some good stipulations now and plans set that under certain conditions, we'll take certain actions, either to continue forward with that outage or look to defer it to a more opportune time for both PCWA and NID's customer base and the communities.
When do you think you'll have a more accurate range or an accurate range of timing for the repair of Spalding 2? You know, I understand right now you're just in your discovery phase or due diligence phase, essentially. So do you think in 2 weeks we'll have an answer about the...
I think at a board level, yes. I think in a couple of weeks. Again, we meet with Chip and the staff twice a week, so as we're getting updates, we'll continue to provide those at that level, and I'm hopeful we'll have a schedule that we're confident in to share publicly at the board level in a couple of weeks.
I look forward to that, because my biggest concern is, of course, refill. I mean, because Chip and his team, we've done remarkable work. They've done remarkable work. But my concern is the refill.
Yeah, it's refill, and then it's making the decision regarding the second horn, which will also be dependent on what type of winter we get.
Right.
So we're going to have to play it by ear a little bit. We're constantly watching weather projections and what flows we're getting in.
I think we talked about this previously, but we do have a second option, and that was brought up on the call, but we do have the option to bypass through that unit if we really get ourselves into a bind.
Spalding 2?
Yes. If we really get ourselves into a bind with water and timing, we have that option. PG&E would prefer that we take the time to fix that unit and operate it in its normal condition as it's meant to be, but we're prepared in the event that we need to be able to bypass to supply the communities with water.
To clarify what you said earlier, you have to dewater to fix it.
Yep.
But it could be used without fixing it.
It could be used without fixing it, but we can't do both at the same time, unfortunately.
It's a little risky to use it without fixing it on a long-term basis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering if in our future, thinking about next year, we can talk about if we were to have a conservation effort. When Greg and I were participating in the Placer County Farm Bureau meeting last past week, it was PCWA commented that they reorificed all of the raw water system. And so I'm wondering if we look at a kind of a worst case scenario, we may need to do that. And so what would it cost? What's the feasibility of it? I just think it should be integrated as
We're all set up to do it. So we purchased all the materials to reorifice to 50%. There's a couple plates that would still need to be fabricated that are custom, but it would be essentially staff time. We'd be ready to do it, but just remember, when you reorifice, say we reorifice to 50%, you don't get 50% savings because people just water longer. So it's not one-to-one.
right.
It would take about 3 weeks to reorifice everything.
Yeah, we would pull in maintenance staff too. We would just deploy an army to reorifice.
Would you do that before the season started or during?
Yeah, I think with irrigation customers, especially the agricultural users, it's imperative that they know what they have to work with before they start buying seeds and whatever other items that they purchase for the upcoming season. So any decision related to that should be made prior to the irrigation season. So once we kind of get into the January timeframe, February, we'll start having a better sense of how the winter is looking. And if, we're extremely dry at that point, then we'll have to start making some tougher decisions.
I was going to say, Chip would probably be able to tell us where that magic time is in January, February. when-
Yeah, it's kind of January,
We have a
February.
pretty good idea, right?
If we don't get big storms in January and February, we're in trouble.
The feeding crane starts planting in February,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not direct seed from the greenhouse. So
Okay.
seeds are bought November, December, which, not a big thing, but once you start putting
If you start growing them.
hours into the greenhouse and everything, and then you're gonna transplant out 9 acres, it's a big hit.
We'll keep that in mind. It's at the forefront of our minds.
Okay, and can we do also differentiate between production ag versus landscape?
Yeah, the water code does allow.
Repurposing?
There's a potential, Dustin and I need to work through it. The water code does allow for a priority based off of use, and agricultural uses that generate food or fodder have higher priority than ornamental landscaping. So I don't know that that would necessarily be an issue, but we'd have to work through how that works.
And of course, the board would be involved in that.
Yeah, yeah. But it's a very valid idea, right? If you're just using it for landscaping, you can reduce your water use.
Follow state law.
It is, it's contemplated in state law, so it's not like we would be doing anything abnormal.
We wouldn't be going rogue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any more questions from anyone? Don?
So, Don Cronin from South area. When you talk about reorificing, are you talking about cutting down, the amount of water I get? In the last drought, I cut down from 1.5 inches to 1 inch. You're talking about cutting me down to 1/2 inch?
It just depends on what the board's final decision would be. The supplies we bought are intended to reorifice 50%, so it would be reduced. But if you did the voluntary reduction, you wouldn't necessarily be getting cut from your voluntary reduction and then half. You'd be cut from your normal amount to half.
Yeah, I'm already cut for my normal amount. So, one thing I would like to do is, I think through this whole thing, NID, the board and all the people at NID have done a terrific job of managing water and, keeping things going, but I personally haven't been hurt by this, because I grow Christmas trees and they can handle going up without water for a while, but I'm sure that people have been hurt by this, and, it seems to me that PG&E should at least be looking at compensating some of those people, because, I mean, they made $2.25 billion last year. I mean, that's not bad. So, and the other thing that bothers me is both of these, powerhouses, go down, and, you know, I work for a company that used deferred maintenance, and it was a disaster in the long term, and it just seems to me that, I don't know if this is because of deferred maintenance, but, it just seems like you're not keeping up with your equipment, with both of them going down. So those powerhouses have been there since the 20s, is that right? I'm sure the equipment's been updated quite a bit, but basically they've been there 100 years.
Yep, original equipment is 1920s vintage.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Don.
Don, you bring an interesting point that I hadn't thought of, is all of our bypass secondary options are like gone. So if there's another major failure, we're in big, big trouble. Like right now, we're using the secondary options on everything. So, it's a big concern. Another major failure would be a big, big problem.
You would like to see some backup to the
Well,
backup?
yeah.
We have
No, I
bypass,
want to be using the
bypass,
primary,
yeah.
and then the backup is the backup.
Yeah.
Right
And
now,
there-
we're using the backup.
We're using the backup to the backup, yeah. So there's, all the options for bypass are impacted.
Yeah.
The other thing, you said the pipe won't be completed, until the middle of September. It seems to me that, the board should be planning that, the raw water users like myself are, you know, the PG&E is not gonna get back online until October. We've seen this timeline set back, and you're talking about a month from the end of the season. and some of us are cutting back already, so it seems like the board should plan on PG&E getting it done before the raw water season's over.
A lot of people agree with you. We got a plan for the worst-case scenario.
And our projections include the worst-case scenario. So we also have sufficient storage, we believe, to make it through the season. So we're okay as long as we're still getting water through Horn 1.
One thing NID's blessed with is people who can go to the bottom line real quick and plan for it. So,
Done a great job.
yeah. Well, thank you. Any more questions? Tyler, thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you in 2 weeks.
We'll be back.
All right. Have a good day. All right, we're going to general orders, and 5A is the budget and actual reports. Second quarter, fiscal year 2024.
All right, I will handle this one. This is just our quarterly report related to the financials. One thing to note, the second quarter financials are always a little bit strange due to the timing of receipt of revenues and then large payments that are made. So it is very typical to receive, have higher expenditures than you would think because of debt service payment, all of the transfers from the major funds into Fund 70, the cost allocated fund, and then a delay in revenues coming in. So some of the percentages look off, but those are explained in the staff report. A couple of items to kind of note. Through the end of the second quarter, we've received revenues totaling about $32.7 million, which is about 43% of the budget. Transfer ins were recorded at 73% of the budget. And so transfer ins are also the big transfers between funds, and it's primarily related to Fund 70, and then some money transferred from Funds 30 and 50 into Fund 10 for engineering services. Outflows, which are the expenditures, including encumbrances, were about $56 million, about 53% of budget, which is normal. Some funds show a little bit higher due to large debt service payments and things we have to prepay, which is normal. And you can note that specifically in Water Fund 10, the admin department, 72% of budget expenditures were spent, and that's also because of the parent funds, Fund 10 and Funds 50. They fully fund the annual CIP cost into the CIP fund. So Fund 10 makes a transfer to Fund 15, and Fund 50 makes a transfer to Fund 55, which is normal.
It's a one-time.
Yeah, a lot of these are one-time things. So then at the end of the year, we go through a lot of reconciliation. Now, remember, Water Fund 10 and Fund 15, which is water capital, it's a parent fund. So Fund 10 is the mothership and Fund 15 rolls up. So we don't necessarily transfer money back and forth every year through reconciliation, but we do with Fund 70. So Funds 10, Funds 30, and Funds 50, they transfer money into Fund 70 for the cost allocation. That's their fair share of the proportional amount of overhead expenditures. And then at the end of the year, we do a reconciliation and move money back over that's not spent. Cost allocated funds should essentially zero out every year. You shouldn't be carrying fund balances every year. For the fundamental reason is that you kind of lose track of whose money it is. And so then you could have one fund spending more towards a cost allocation because of a large fund balance that gets mixed up.
Jen, in that area of overhead allocation, we were going to be doing a study to kind of dive into that more in detail. Is that kind of a little bit on the back burner right now?
No, it's actually coming next board meeting. I've received the preliminary results and the cost allocation distribution that was determined. So if you'll recall, when we first opened up Fund 70, there's a number of different ways to complete a cost allocation. And what the cost allocation does is it assigns a proportional responsibility to each of the major operating funds for their fair share of the overhead expenditures, which are now housed in Fund 70. So those are expenditures such as Greg and I, Dustin, this building, the board, anything that's considered beneficial to all of the funds. We did hire a consultant. Our first cost allocation equation was extremely simple. It was basically a blend of revenue received and number of staff, which is a kind of a quick and dirty way to do it. Defensible, but quick. Our consultant came in, and I've seen the preliminary percentage distribution between the funds, and it's like 1% off of the quick and dirty method. So we won't see a big switch. One thing to note, though, is we are looking at moving, currently engineering services is in the water fund, and then Fund 50 hydro and Fund 30 recreation. They move direct allocate back into Fund 10 to pay for their fair share of engineering. We're going to move in the next budget, and we'll talk about this more when we bring it forward. We're going to move engineering services into Fund 70. It just makes it easier from an accounting perspective. So you'll see some changes, but it's likely going to come at the next board meeting. So, yeah.
So great. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
As an example, hydro has covered all the costs on the upper division, which is a subsidy to everybody.
Correct.
Raw water, treated water, but mainly raw water. Is that possible to break that out so we can understand how much hydro is really subsidizing raw water operations?
Yeah, and we showed that, We had them plan for water, and then when we did the hydro breakdown. Yeah, so essentially, it's about 7-8 million a year, if I recall off the top of my head, but we can. Maybe a little more. It could have been a little bit more.
I have 12 in my head.
12 in my head.
Oh, yes, I have 12. My brain's malfunctioning.
Okay.
It was 12.
I was excited to learn that.
Yeah, so hydro pays for hydro operations and also all of the upper divisions. So when we look at the distribution of hydro costs, and I can bring those tables back, we look at it in terms of what does the division pay for that is just hydropower related, and what would still exist even if we didn't have hydropower, and that's essentially the operation of all the upper division reservoirs. So from that standpoint, yeah, raw water, because of the water use, they do get about 90% of the benefit, but that's normal.
Yeah, I mean, my recollection was 4 million for operations of hydro, 10 million for the upper division, and the rest would actually be then dispersed out. But we're going to need that for Prop 218, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So that comes soon.
Yep. Yeah. I received a schedule from the consultant. I have a couple comments on the schedule. Once I get those comments flushed through with the consultant, then we'll bring the rate schedule to the board. You can see it. We can talk about that a little bit more. We are just a hair behind on a number of things right now related to PG&E and having some. Yeah. We have some department head vacancies that are a little challenging too, but we're on it.
So I can see the actual to budget. Mm-hmm. But I think you told me a number the other day that kind of went, whoa. So last year, we were able to increase our net cash position by 16.8 million. And you said you already this year have how much more ready to put into reserves?
You know what, let's go to the next item, because I think you'll see some of the numbers and how this occurs.
But it's a significant number.
Yeah, we have another probably. We manage cash on a weekly basis. I know I've stated this before, but we manage cash between our checking account, between the local agency investment fund, which we consider our savings account because you can pull money quickly out of it. We keep emergency funds in there in the event something catastrophic happens. And then we invest money on the market. We kind of set benchmark levels for each one of those accounts to ensure that we have cash flow, but we also do a weekly cash flow projection on which revenues we think coming in, and then big payments and what we have going out on an average basis. So we utilize that tool to identify where we should move money, and then we work with our investment advisors on should we put the money in LAIF or should we put it into investments. A lot of it right now, we're still trying to fix our portfolio where we're doing that whole rebalancing. But yeah, we do have some additional cash right now, which you'll really see in the mid-year adjustment. We have many of the beginning year-end fund or beginning year fund balances are higher than our original projections in the budget. So when we go through budgeting, what we do is we make projections on how much money we think is going to be expended for the year and revenue that we're going to receive. And then once you go through audit, all those projections get reconciled, and there's a huge reconciliation that is completed with Fund 70. And once those reconciliations and the audit is all completed, then you'll see in the next item, we bring forward a mid-year, and that mid-year readjusts those beginning year fund balances so that we have a more accurate picture. Because staff is already starting budgeting now, for the next coming year. So we're constantly trying to project, refine, because, you know, any of the numbers we show you, they have immediately changed by the end of the day, just because of money coming in and out.
I think the point I also want to make is that financial fiscal responsibility is job one, along with delivering water, affordable water.
Right.
And your crew is doing an excellent job.
Well, it's huge kudos to Sandra and her team. They are just, have completely cleaned up the finances and are completely on top of it, which is very comforting, because when you're way behind on the finances like it used to be, you never really know what's going on, and it's a very uncomfortable position to be in. And everyone's bought into the fact that it's not our money, it's ratepayer money. And so we're stewards of the money, so it's our responsibility to be as diligent as possible.
Go ahead, quick one. How do you tell that story to the ratepayers?
Sure.
By not, by keeping rates down, which we have for the last 3 years, but also it's incredible what you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm extremely sensitive to super large rate increases. I know that it's very trying on our customers. And so we've buckled tightened our buckle.
Right.
Tighten your belt.
Belt.
You've tightened your belt.
Yeah. That was so close.
Buckle too.
Really wasn't
they were
that
all,
close.
I was stretching there. But, we are all very concerned about money, and I am extremely concerned about money always, so.
Yeah.
Well, we really
I think
appreciate it.
it speaks to the management's philosophy that we don't just automatically raise rates. We're at the end of a rate cycle, so we just raise them. You really took a step back. You looked at our staffing, you consolidated departments, you automated, streamlined processes. I think you and the team have done a remarkable job with that.
Well, it takes a huge commitment from staff and the department heads, because nobody likes to hear that we're not, it's a tendency for most agencies to grow in time equivalent numbers. Mm-hmm. And you really have to look at, if your system's not getting a whole lot larger, why? Can we do things better? Do we need to be doing some of these things? It's an old agency, so there's a lot of, we've always done it this way. And the department heads have been great. Everyone's really been kind of bought into, we're only spending what we need to. And if we can do things smarter and quicker and without as much staff, let's do it.
Well, everybody's done a fabulous job.
Yeah, they've been wonderful.
Yep.
Jennifer, I had a question on the budget to actuals on page 3. There's a line about Hydro Fund 50 revenue is only 30% of the budget. I thought if we had a contract that we got to check once a month, that we weren't selling power.
Yeah, it's only related to the power purchase agreement that covers the larger powerhouses. That is paid on availability. The other powerhouses, we have run-of-the-river powerhouses, and then we do, remember, we have a couple contracts where we sell power on the market. Those are,
So those would cause the flux.
Okay. Yeah, and then we are going to see a revenue hit this year in hydro because of the powerhouses that are not paid under the power purchase agreement, which is on availability. The ones that are actually on power generation, we will see a revenue hit there, and we will see a revenue hit in recreation. We're getting massive campground cancellations right now.
Of course.
Yeah.
So on the power purchase agreement, we're guaranteed a certain amount, and so we could budget for that. On the open market, I know Keenan was saying that for a long time this spring, we had to shut down hydro because if we had produced energy, they would have demanded a payment from us to take our energy. Negative market.
Yeah, sometimes there is a negative market. There is times where we shut the powerhouses down because of the negative market. So we check in on the market prices daily. We've been shut down because of the PG&E issue. But outside of that, there are negative market situations. So we do shut down the powerhouses when that's occurring.
And recreation. Wow.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because of the fee increases that the board has adopted, which is good financial stewardship. We were going to be looking a lot better, and now we've taken a huge hit.
But Fauchery is still full.
Yes, but Fauchery has 2 campsites. Those 2 campsites are full. Yeah.
Are the boat ramps still open at Scotts Flat? I thought the line.
One is open at Scotts Flat, Rollins is, but we're pulling out sailboats with those deep holes. We're afraid they're gonna get stuck in the mud out there. Anyone we can't get a hold of to pull out, we're gonna move to the deeper part of the lake.
So it's gonna get interesting when the Forest Service comes around next spring looking for more money.
For their campground?
Tell them to go see PG&E.
Yeah, right.
Go talk to PG.
That's right.
We diverged.
But that's all I had on this item, and I think that we have, this was a receive and file item.
Yeah,
We already gone
very
through the
good.
details.
All right, do we have a motion or any public comment? Motion to receive and file?
I'll make a motion to receive and file.
I'll second. A budget to actual report.
Fiscal year 2024, second quarter. Roll call, please.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1.
Yes.
Aye. Okay. 5B, we're going to fiscal year 2024 mid-year budget amendment.
All right, I am going to also handle this one. So this is a typical mid-year budget amendment. We try to do amendments related to not just budgeted expenditures, but also budgeted revenues, as well as beginning fund ballots. We haven't amended revenues for hydro and recreation yet because we're not quite sure how we're still going to shake out, but we will bring back an item to clean it all up. And we have provided the board with a preliminary estimate what we think the impacts are going to be. But as you can see with this dynamic situation with things getting fixed and then broken again and then fixed, we still don't have a complete concrete estimate on complete revenue impacts, but we will once we get into budgeting. So the proposed budget, mid-year budget amendment results in a net decrease of outflows of $765,000, including increases to operational expenses, including $651,000, and decreases to capital expenses of $1.4 million. So we are decreasing more than we are increasing, and this is very common. I know that the district didn't do this in previous years. We've been doing it the past couple of years, but when you're doing capital projects that span multiple fiscal years, it is important, especially getting in the budget, to start taking a realistic look at what you're actually going to build and spend this year versus what you budgeted, because it's often off. It could be a little bit more or a lot less is usually what happens.
You try to do what you can do when you can do it.
Yeah, you know, we get caught up with supply chain issues. We get caught up with right-of-way issues. We get caught up with environmental permitting. There's a number of reasons what goes into why a capital project doesn't exactly go on schedule. So we make these adjustments, and then what that helps us do is, remember when I was talking about that beginning year fund balance, that helps us have more accurate beginning year fund balances going into budgeting. So the table on the second page shows you what we are proposing to increase and decrease for both capital as well as for operational expenditures. A couple of items are added on for insurance purposes. So, for example, operational expenditures, which is the second half of the table. We needed to get both the Deer Creek system that we acquired after the budget was approved, insured, as well as the Whitcomb building. And then we did make a huge expenditure, well, it is fairly huge, $250,000 for South Yuba Canal. It's important that we have supplies on hand in case there is some type of damage that is done over the winter or even in the summer with the tree falling on it. Those are custom flume sheets, so we do have some of them on hand now in the event that there is. Yeah. So you'll see what the increases are. Operationally, the increases are primarily, or the change modifications are increases in expenditures, but from a capital perspective, it's primarily decreases. And then moving to page 3, you'll see the modifications to the original beginning fund balance versus the updated fund balance. And for the most part, they are all positives, increasing more. So I'll touch on some of the big ones, and that's water and hydro. Some of the why we have more money than we thought we had is largely related to more revenue coming in, also less expenditures in Fund 70, and then reduced capital expenditures per what was budgeted. So this is positive. And then that same internal services is also the same. Remember when I said internal services Fund 70, we want to zero out every year. Did anyone have any questions on any of these before I move on? And then you'll see the budgetary impact by fund down at the bottom. And so this is something, we keep, and our new budget person is doing an excellent job. His name is Corey. He's great. You'll get introduced to him more during the budgeting season. I think you've met him a couple of times. Yeah. He's doing a wonderful job on keeping up on the budget. So that is a key position, and he came to us from a city in Arizona and brought a lot of great skills. So it's been really good for the district.
Nice.
Yeah, big thanks to Corey.
Do we have any public comment? Trevor?
No, looks good.
Thanks, Ricky. Yeah. Nice work. One question, is this where we could say that you're about ready to put 4 or 5 million more into our reserves?
I don't like to show my cards like that. No. I got to go through the cash management still. I'm not ready to commit in public.
There you go. Just to point out.
But I do love that. Nothing makes me happier than noticing we have excess money.
Yes. To say that to build reserves, because we're going to need them. We have a humongous capital improvement projects coming forward.
We have rates coming up, and we don't want to overly impact our ratepayers. And then secondly, we have huge capital projects coming up. So we are essentially rat-holing as much money as we possibly can.
I do appreciate this report. I think, I don't know if the format's a little different, but it really appreciate the way it's broken down.
Very clear.
And very clear. Excellent job on it.
Yeah, that's all Corey and Sandra. They did a great job.
Yes, thank you both.
And Chris, I want you to make sure you put rat holing in
the minutes.
My official term.
Manager's term.
So during Plan for Water, there were discussions around reducing some of the reserves as like one of the options.
Of water reserves.
No. Financial reserves.
We have talked about that. So
I've asked that question. How do you know?
Yeah, how much?
I'm just wondering where the rat hole's going to. Are we reducing those reserves to what you consider to be typical for a system like ours, which I think we had some good conversations that made sense. And then is that money going somewhere for these large capital expense?
Yeah, so it's a balance of both. So what we're doing, right now, nothing's getting reduced. We're just kind of shoving as much money in the bank as possible. But once we go through rates, when we start looking at these large capital projects, this is where this whole conversation of do we pay cash, do we bond, and it all just depends on the market dynamics at the time, what our 10-year outlook looks like for what we have to pay for, and then taking into consider rate increases. Right now, the current reserve policy, in my opinion, outside of the capital projects you have to pay for, it has capital reserves that aren't necessarily related to a capital project. So you're always going to be saving money for these capital projects that are really expensive, so you don't have these huge spikes in rates in 1 year.
Yeah.
Outside of that, the question's going to be, and what the board's going to have to tackle, is what do we want on hand for insurance? What do we want on hand for, insurance as far as insurance against risk and some catastrophic event? And then what is a good reserve for cash flow? Right now, some of those are high. So in a typical rate setting process, you hold your reserves, you fund your reserves first, and then any excess money over the reserves, you use that to buy down the rates. If you have more reasonable reserves, you have more money to buy down the rates. And our conversation is going to be, what is the reasonable level of reserves? What do we need to pay for over the next 10 years? And then how much is left for reasonable rates?
And that conversation is going to happen when?
So we're gonna bring the schedule back. We're getting, the cost allocation as a key component of it. That's coming, next week, or not next week, next meeting. And then we'll bring the schedule. I have a couple comments on it. We'll probably tee that up for the following meeting. And then we'll really dive into rates kind of December, January timeframe, and start that whole public process. But it'll be a long process because there's complicated conversations that have to occur specifically with reserves.
Okay.
But right now, we're kind of operating on 6 months operating capital.
Yeah, we have completely funded 6 months of operating capital, which is about normal. You see most public agencies have, for operating reserves, have about 3 to 6 months of cash. Because we are in a high catastrophic risk area due to fire or snow or whatever, we do have a catastrophic reserve that's a little bit higher, but I think that's warranted. We've seen what can happen. There's some other reserves in there that we've talked about that we didn't fund this year. One, for example, is the watershed reserve, because we do pay-go on watershed projects anyways, so there's no reason to reserve money for it. You're not gonna have an emergency watershed project. There was a reserve that we don't fully fund related to compensated absences for staff, and essentially required reserve of, say, every single person in the district left today, what would be the payouts for vacation and any of the other leaves?
It's a huge number.
It's a huge number, and it's not gonna happen. So we reduced that to something. So a lot of those.
Some of those have been adjusted, you talked about.
Yeah, so we, if you go to the budget, if you look in the budget and the staff report, you'll see there's basically a little verbal analysis of each reserve and what we did do and what we didn't do. Some of it, when you reserve money, technically, you're not supposed to touch it unless the board finds some overriding reason to touch it. But like I said, what that does is it does inadvertently impact your ratepayers, because that money's not available to essentially buy down rates, especially with all these super expensive projects coming up. So you really want, it's a careful balance of making sure our reserves are appropriate, taking into consideration rates, and then what we have to start building.
So Jen, is the CIP, is the CIP that we saw the initial preview of, or how are we going to continue that conversation? Because for me, that's one of the most important components of the rates, and it seems that that will take more time and discussion at the board level than some of the other issues, which are just more matter of fact. And so I'm wondering how much time we're going to have to be able to wrestle with that.
As much as we need. There's some, there's projects from the standpoint that operational expenditures with rates are largely driven by insurance, kind of debt service, and labor, and materials and supplies to an extent. But those are your, kind of your three big ones that kind of can swing it. Capital expenditures is a tool that we use to keep rates down. We can make decisions, the board can make a decision that we're gonna replace 10% of every treated water pipeline every single year. Well, that comes with a huge cost. So when you start, we always start big with rates and say, okay, this is our absolute wants. And then you look at the rate and you're like, oh, okay, that doesn't work. We're not doing 150% rate increase. That's crazy. So then that's when we start saying, okay, well, we're actually gonna do 1% replacement of every treated water line. And so that all comes out in those conversations. And sometimes it takes a little time, sometimes it takes a long time. It just really depends on how much we want to toggle those toggles. But once the rate model's built, they're easy to toggle.
Yeah. So I've been around long enough to remember when the grand jury said we had too many reserves. Too much reserves, okay? And I go, today, what would they say today? And what is their basis for that number, right? What's too much reserves, right?
They have no jurisdiction.
And so, well, I know. And then, so then the board went on a spending spree to get rid of some of the reserves.
You just need to make sure if you're going to go on a spending spree, it's smart spending. You don't want to spend money on projects that don't necessarily move the needle on some of the priorities of the board.
So if
we don't need to go on a spending spree.
If we do due diligence on
no spending spree.
If we do due diligence on analyzing the reserves and say and justify our positions, we'd be ready to answer that question.
Well, and also remember, a grand jury, they have jurisdiction to do an investigation to the district, but there is no obligation on behalf of the district to comply with a grand jury. And given the large expenditures that we have ahead of us, it would be impossible to say our reserves are too high. We may reallocate them, you know, we may be moving more money into spending for these large capital projects or wildfire, but I don't think that the reserves are too high.
Plus-
The overall number.
Plus today we can show, okay, this money we've been investing has been making this much money.
Well, and there's also something to be said to that. You know, just because you have high reserves doesn't mean you want to spend it. You might want to leverage it as an investment and live off the return, right? Those are the questions we take into account. I'm not overly worried about the.
Okay, well, I'm not worried either. I just,
Yeah.
you know, I have no clue what that number should be, right?
Yeah.
You ready for
But it would, but just to be clear, our reserves are, just a percentage of our oncoming capital improvement projects that we're gonna need. It's maybe not even 25% what we need.
Yeah, so we have some major large ones. We have Scotts Flat Spillway, which looks like it might be a little bit more expensive. Doug and I are going to be working with the regulators to try to address their new comments on the design. We also have the Chicago Park refurbishment. You know, we do have some issues with South Yuba Canal. And then, there is a ton of treated water infrastructure that the treated water ratepayers, we have to start replacing. Unfortunately, it's all built at the same time. So.
New FERC license.
The new FERC license.
Yeah, the new FERC license is the other big.
The one that was 216
The big elephant in the
million.
room.
How much has that gone up now since?
Yeah. We have a lot of stuff staring at us.
And it's gonna come within the next 10 years.
Yeah, we will have some big money spent in the next 10 years, so.
You have a comment online?
Yeah, we can handle that. I'm not getting,
Can you see who it is, Chris?
It's my iPad.
okay, Mike, please go.
Yeah, this is a kind of a hydro question, but also related to finances and overall strategy. Just paying attention to the power markets and comments about negative power rates and having to adjust to that seems to be becoming a regular thing. And also the sale of the Deer Creek Hydro Project to NID, the PG&E's reasoning was that it was becoming more expensive. They weren't running it profitably. And, the first question is NID able to run Deer Creek at a positive cash flow in this power market? I'm assuming there's a power agreement for that. And thank goodness for the power agreements because, out on the open market, things are becoming more and more competitive. Frankly, hydro is getting beat by solar and batteries. So is there anyone looking at the overall hydro profitability strategy and thinking about adding battery storage so that we can take base load and convert to peaking and things like that? Also, if PG&E decides, we're not operating Spalding at a profit, and that entire hydro project, the Drum Spalding project, if PG&E decides, we want to get out of that business, we want to sell that, is that too big for NID and PCWA to take on? And is anyone looking at the possibilities there? What happens if PG&E decides to sell out of hydro there?
So my quick answer is no.
No to what?
No, it's not too large.
Yeah, and remember also that PG&E had requested from the CPUC to divest their non-nuclear assets, and the Spalding asset was included in the list of assets to sell. That request to the CPUC did get initially denied. I do think that they are trying to kind of repackage that deal to resell again, But it would be, I mean, ideal for the district. It would solve water supply issues, and it would give us more control over the movement of water in the watershed to have the Spalding system.
Not to mention the maintenance,
Reliability.
infrastructure, reliability.
All of those
So
concerns.
Mike, your point is right on,
Yeah.
right on target, that Spalding is really important.
Yeah.
Well, and the other part,
Go ahead.
just the other part of your point is that, yeah, the answer is yes. People are looking at all of those things that you brought up
We've been talking about that one
for
since
a long time.
Right, the whole profitability of power, all that stuff.
Yeah, our large power purchase agreement expires in 2032.
33, 32.
I thought it was 32. And that's where a lot of big decisions need to be made, because that is a very favorable contract to the district, because that it's paid on availability and not production.
I guess no, it's not too big, and yes, we are looking at it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct. Both
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Good point.
Mr. President, you ready for a motion on the resolution?
We haven't seen any more on public comment, so a motion.
I would move that we adopt resolution 2024-29, fiscal year 2024 mid-year budget amendment.
I'll second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5.
Yes. Okay. Now we're to 5C, which is the FERC Part 12D Independent Consultant Inspection Service.
Good morning, Board. Okay. All right, well, good morning, everybody. Doug Roderick, Director of Engineering. And let's see, the first item is the Part 12D stuff. And so we're here today recommending that we award a contract with HDR for a little over $2.8 million for the requirements of FERC and the Part 12D, which includes periodic inspections as well as the comprehensive assessments. And if you remember, Lacey gave that presentation to the board. We talked about some of the new things that were coming. Part of this is that comprehensive assessments, which are basically every 10 years, which is a way deeper dive into looking at these facilities. And there's 4 of them in this contract that we'll be doing. And so this is going to be spread out over the next, let's see, 4 years. We finish in 28. So the majority of the work is actually going to be happening in these next couple of years. We'll have a little bit this year, but probably not a lot. But it was imperative that we get somebody on board. As you're aware, we sent it out to 20-something firms. We got 2 responses because everybody's swamped, everybody's busy. So we want to try to get ahead of the game as best as possible. The 2 we did receive, both HDR and Gannett Fleming, both very qualified firms. We had HDR ranked 1, them 2, very close. They both had considerable amount of expertise in developing this. And then when we opened up the cost, we see that HDR was a little bit less. And so, so our recommendation is that we move forward with this process with the HDR group. Do you have any specific questions with regards to?
I do. I asked Jen some of and those listening. Work on the contract will run through 4 years or through 2028. Was there an allowance for the inflationary increases for salaries and so on, so that, you know, we always have costs increase and then we end up getting, contract amendments because the cost increase? So I'm just wondering, in comparing the 2, you know, did they make allowances? Did HDR make allowances?
So typically, in our consulting contracts, we have a billable rates that we have for all the different folks that are working on that, and that is good for a specific amount of time. And then, and I don't know if you guys remember off the top of your head, but I can't remember on that contract if it was at the end of next year when they can come to us and show that they have higher billable rates, and then we can go back and take a look at that. So we deal with it potentially at that component.
And remember, it's a time and materials contract,
Right.
so they're not necessarily going to spend
Right.
X amount of dollars for task one, it could be something less. You know, there is some ability to kind of shift money around within those line items.
Yeah, so just because they've gone up 5% or 10% in their billable rates doesn't mean the overall contract's gonna be more, right? We try to,
And then I assume we also have contingency in there for like 10%, what?
we don't, because this is a T&M contract.
Right, okay,
Not to exceed.
Yeah,
not to exceed, okay.
so we can't go above that unless, of course, we get authorization to do so.
Scope, something.
And then this is a comment that I noticed that, through the reading of the staff report, that FERC requires, that this is a FERC requirement, right? Yeah, and they're requiring third-party inspections. Yet, in the case of PG&E, PG&E is permitted to do self-inspections. And I just thought that was an
Well, they're
interesting.
still gonna be required under, 12,
Remember that?
independent consultant.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
I just thought that was.
The independent consultant inspections, which are done every 5 years, PG&E also has to do those as well.
Okay, that's comforting.
I think what you're referencing is the construction inspections.
Yeah.
And any construction inspector with a construction project within FERC jurisdiction, FERC has to approve the resume for that person. So, and we could use our own staff as well on a construction project.
And to highlight what Lacey had mentioned before, right, the CAs are the new component to what we're doing, and it's over half, it's basically half of the cost of this contract is for the CA component. So it's added a big driver to us.
What's the intent? Why did FERC do this? I mean, what's the point?
Bill?
Yeah.
The Oroville spillway damage and the fear of a large dam failure really caused FERC to enhance the rules.
The pendulum swung.
Yeah.
And so this goes way deeper. You look at all the construction information, the as-built, you go through, you're doing a level 2 risk assessment. You're doing all these things at this much higher level, probable failure modes, all these types of things that they want to see every 10 years to make sure that we try to mitigate those as best as possible.
Any grant money out there to cover part of this?
I don't know if there's any grant money for this component of it. I'm not aware of any, anyway. I don't know if, I don't think there's much on this one. This is dam owners get to.
There's, some grant programs and some, allowances in some of the upcoming bonds that will be voted on for dam safety projects, but not kind of this dam safety and project planning, but not Part 12D.
We are still in the running, by the way, for Scotts Flat through the DOE.
Yeah.
We should know by the end of this year, which would be up to $5 million.
Nice.
So FERC is also requiring Department of Water Resources to go through this?
Everyone.
Anybody that's got a FERC license.
Yeah.
Has to deal with that.
Yeah, it's challenging because we have to deal with FERC as well as state regulators.
Yeah. And of course, we've got a bunch of dams, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of dams.
And then how are you doing, this is sort of an offshoot, but the idea of exempting some of those little dams from the FERC license?
Yeah, so that's part of the analysis going into Deer Creek. That's also some of the work we're doing related to the FERC relicensing. And then, as we talked about, we're taking Loma Rica, see what we can do there. So, you know, in this day of regulatory requirements, I was trying to be more politically correct. You really have, you know, agencies such as ours or system owners really have to take a look at the cost benefit of the facility.
Right.
Regulations are so heavy, you know, do we get enough benefit out of the facility to pay for it?
Lower Scotts Flats included in this?
No.
Because that is a gem.
And of course, we've got enough money this year for this year's budget, and then we'll be budgeting accordingly for the next couple of years to make sure as we figure out the burn rates and all that type of stuff.
Well, it really says something when you have 21 consulting firms that are eligible for this work and 2 bid.
Yeah, 2 bid and 4 reply that, you know,
It's highly specialized and not everybody would get approved by FERC.
yeah. And it's,
They're sticklers.
and it's a relatively new piece, right? So the consultants are also learning, as dam owners are also learning what's all involved with that and what FERC really wants.
And there's a heavy lift in the first kind of go around because of the document submittal. You have to collect all the historical records, organize them in a specific fashion. So some of that, once it's done once, subsequent shouldn't be as hard, you're just adding on to it.
You gotta submit plans for the inspection. Plans for the plans, right? There's a whole big piece of.
Plan for the plan, for the plan.
So did our relationship and past experience with HDR help?
Absolutely, we're very familiar with HDR. Obviously, they've been helping us out with quite a few things in the past, and they're currently doing a design for Scotts Flat.
They just know our system really well.
System very well. Good qualified staff there, and then they also know the process, right? I think they might have been one of the original first CAs that were done for Seattle, I think. And so they were they were on the ground floor learning what FERC wanted, which I'm not sure FERC even knows exactly % of what they're looking for. So it's like an evolving process, right? We need to do this, but as we go along, things are gonna continue to change as we do.
That should go in the minutes too, Chris. FERC may not know what we're looking for.
I strike that one, please, Chris.
Iterative process.
Thank you.
We love sound bites. So, we have a motion. Comment from anybody? I didn't see any public comment.
All right, I'll make a motion to award a contract to HDR in the amount of $2,810,589 to complete the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission FERC required Part 12D independent consultant IC inspection services for 12 district dams and authorize the general manager to execute the appropriate documents.
I'll second. We're done. Any more comment? Chris, roll call, please.
Aye.
David Gray,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Yes. Five.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to 5D,
Okay.
which is the award of contract for the new hydroelectric field office roof repairs.
Yeah, so, again, we're here recommending, that we, amend the annual budget, and we've got the resolution there that does that. And then, also award a contract to Diversified Construction and International, in the amount of $751,000, as well as a 10% contingency to round that up to $827,000, to repair the roof at the Colfax building, which is the Whitcomb building we purchased a couple years ago, which will ultimately be the new hydroelectric facility headquarters. So we had a condition assessment done last year, and we've identified that this particular type of material, which is like a PVC membrane type roofing element over the top of the raised stem metal roof that we have out there now. So we put together, based on that, we put together a spec, sent that out to a bunch of roofing firms, and we got 6 proposals back, as you can see in the staff report there. One of the things, the nuances is that when we originally looked at that in the condition assessment, we had identified a minimum of 60 mils, the thickness of the material, and a 20-year warranty that's done by the manufacturer. The manufacturer is actually for 50 mils is 20 years, and 60 mils is 25 years. So, we decided that it was best that we go with the 60 mil, which gives us 25 years, and it's an unconditional there's no, what's the word I'm looking for?
The warranty on it?
Prorating of the warranty. It's 25 years, so the manufacturer, this Duralast, will actually be out there and inspect the roof when it's completed, sign off on it, and then we have a 25-year unconditional fix. So anything that gets done, that gets damaged or needs to be fixed, they will come out and take care of that at 100% cost. Doesn't affect what's inside the building should something get damaged, but it will fix anything on the roof that becomes a problem over those next 25 years. And so we're recommending to go with the 60 mil. It made a difference of about 60-some thousand, maybe $70,000 difference to give us another 5 years, and we thought it was well worth it to do that.
complete replacement?
It's an overlay. So what happens is we've got the metal roof that's there now, and so what they come in is they put in this, I think they call it a flue, something insulation, which basically fills in the ridges, and then they put a board over the quarter-inch, board over the top of that, and then they lay this overlayment over the top of that. And this is mechanically installed, so they'll be screwing it down through, and then they cover up those things. And then they're like 10-foot rolls, and then they weld the seams as they go along. We're also removing all the skylights, where we have nothing but trouble with the leaks.
Right.
So we're removing those, and then we'll be replacing those with the metal roof, and then putting this new material over the top.
Most large buildings have these types of roofs. They're kind of interesting if you've ever gone up in on one.
Yeah,
The slope is less than 2%, right?
it's pretty flat.
And we had to put one on a house last summer. And, I mean, it looks all right, and it works.
Yeah, it works, right? That's the key, is that it works, and we've got a warranty that's gonna be good for 25 years, which I think is beneficial for us to do that. So,
How many acres of roof do we have?
it's about 60,000 acres, or square feet?
Yeah, 60,000 acres.
Oh, you said acres. You tricked me.
In the bid, I am kind of familiar with these kind of roofs, having done industrial buildings most of my career. Is this contractor gonna take care of the scuppers and redo those scuppers? Because that can be,
Yeah, the scuppers, all the drains, all the downspouts, all of that is being.
so it is included?
It is all included in the price.
Big project.
It is, and it's, I think it's about 160 days, I think they have total to do it.
Mm-hmm. Really?
So it's gonna take a little bit of time, yeah.
Where's DCI located?
Idea.
Oh. Off the top of my head.
I was just wondering if any of these are local contracting.
Some of them were, I don't know what they are.
I can't remember, I mean.
I do feel like,
Auburn, aren't they?
They're in the.
I kind of feel like I did look it up and it was one of the ones that was local.
They're not here, like, here in the county, but I think they are relatively close, either Sacramento, maybe Auburn, that was it.
Keep this cost quite a bit, lower than the other bids.
Yeah, if you're not having to put people in rooms and long distance travel back and forth, absolutely. Yeah.
I just
Apologize. I
And
shouldn't have done that.
I presume that you guys
Auburn.
vet them a little bit to see, like, how many other projects of this size or near this size they've done, and
Yeah, that was
track record.
they needed to do. They needed to submit that as part of their bid, and then, of course, had Nathan actually go out and he talked to the manufacturer, and they are a licensed installer, so they will be able to, they know how to install this roofing system, and then the manufacturer who is ultimately giving us the warranty will be signing off on it because they have worked with these guys in the past.
Yeah, they're well-known in the roofing industry. I was able to speak to, actually, two other people offhand.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, when we get the warranty from the manufacturer, will that be transferable in the event we ever want to or need to sell that building?
I would assume so. I don't know.
Well, you know what, you have to ask, because sometimes they're not. And
We can
sometimes
ask.
you have to pay extra.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sometimes you have to pay extra to get a transferable warranty. And over 25 years, that might not be a bad thing to think.
Yeah, we'll ask for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely support this. Yay.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, we got this for such a good deal, and I was talking to Jen about the total cost per square foot, and it's still gonna be.
Yeah, we're still looking good, and we need
Yeah,
to
we're
sell
looking
that other
really good.
building. Yeah.
Yeah, once we get the roof done, we'll start the design here at the end of this year and into next year, and then construction on those lower offices next year. And you'll see that in the budget.
All right, any public comment? You have a motion?
Well, I would like to move approval. We adopt the resolution, where's the resolution in here? Oh,
Yeah.
The resolution 2024-30, approval of the 2024 Fund 55 capital budget amendment and award of the construction contract for the new hydroelectric field office, repairs project number 2432.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please. Chris?
Aye.
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 Yes,
Yes. All right.
Awesome, thank you.
thank you.
Doug, thank you.
Thank you.
General Manager's report.
I am happy to report that we are nearing the end of our recruitment for the hydropower director position, and the recruitment was really good. So, one of the better recruitments we've had. So I'm really excited. Should have some news to report, hopefully next week time frame, so keep posted. And we've just been busy winding up summer, dealing with our issues and presentations. Yeah, Greg's been on the talking circuit again. So if anybody in the public needs someone to come speak, Greg is wonderful at doing it.
Greg is wonderful. I can attest to it.
Yeah, Greg is
And he likes snacks, so he'll do it for free for a snack.
I think the Energy Alliance maybe.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Directors, start with Chris.
Only thing I have is I attended the opening ceremonies of the fair along with Karen. That's always fun.
You also had a visitor at your
Oh, yeah, I
mini
did.
pond.
I did.
Who?
Kevin Kiley and
Oh, yeah.
2 supervisors and the ag commissioner and RCD, what's her title? Director.
Who?
Bree.
Resource Conservation
Research,
District.
yeah. Came and viewed Jeremy's new pond, the guy that leases land from me. We got nervous, he did, both did, over the canal rotation outages, and so he's been talking about this for a long time. We've been talking about the bigger part is, or not the bigger part, but a very key part is conservation of water, the way we purchase water, that we can cut back on water purchases by storing it. And that's, he's already calculating that in, so he's already pumping the water there anyway, because we don't have enough gravity flow, so, little pond, really cute, not a big pond, but, so that, we were toting that.
Good.
Doesn't have to be large.
No. And it met the, exempt criteria for engineering, because it meets the height and width requirements.
Did you just build the pond?
2 weeks ago.
Did you put a draft hydrant in?
No.
Such a good opportunity. If you can put a draft hydrant in, it'll help you
I
with
didn't think of
insurance.
that.
And it's like $1,000 in parts.
Quite a bit.
Fire chief lives on that road, he didn't mention it either. Well, we could add that.
Phase 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you line it?
And I thought that was gonna be your question, so the contractor said, you got yellow clay here, you don't gotta line it.
So you didn't line it? Yeah, I didn't line mine either. So it's easy, you could add the draft hydrant.
Good point.
Yeah, my report will be short. I basically have been doing a lot of constituent work, answering questions and so on. But if you would indulge me for a moment, I got an amazing, wonderful letter from a constituent about her experience with our NID staff, and it's very positive. So I thought, because I really want everybody to hear this, and it's from, so I want these guys to pay attention. Or did you share this with them?
Yeah.
You did, okay.
It was a very nice email.
It is just really great. I won't read the whole thing because it'll take quite a while, but she said this was out on the North Day Road project, and she said, during the time your crews were here, Waste Management couldn't reach us, and we often had trucks on the small road at both sides of our house. The NID crew took our trash cans each week down the road to where Waste Management could get them. Whenever we needed to leave home, they cheerfully moved whatever equipment was blocking our way. Our section of the road is unpaved with road rock and was pretty well stirred up with all the equipment driving by each day. We were amazed that before they left, the NID crews, carefully rocked the road, leaving it in better condition than they found it. They worked hard for weeks in 100+ degree weather and were unfailingly cheerful and diligent. We want you to know how impressed we all are with the quality of their work and their representation of NID. Thank you to the board and the staff.
Thanks for reading.
Yeah, I thought that was really great.
Very nice.
It was a sweet note and very genuine.
I'm not surprised, because they are always cheerful and helpful, but.
I agree. I always find them amazing.
Yeah.
But it's nice to, when you hear that feedback.
Yes, for sure. It's very easy for, when you're doing a construction project, to not understand your impacts to your neighbors, but
Right.
they're,
And people can get really grumpy, we've had that.
they can be kind of mean, yeah.
It's a very brushy road.
It is, so they were really pleased.
That's good.
That's all for me, thank you.
Okay, I attended via Zoom with Greg, the Placer County Farm Bureau meeting. I also attended the opening ceremony at the Nevada County Fair, and that leads to a suggestion that we nominate Chris Tepanian to be the singer of the national anthem at the Super Bowl next year.
I want her for each one of our meetings.
It is amazing.
It is.
It is amazing. It was a combination of tears and goosebumps. I tell you, that was a home run, Chris.
Well, we can get the plane to fly over every other Wednesday morning.
Yeah. That's right.
Right behind us.
And the other thing I did was I visited, off of Highway 20, the South Yuba Canal and the headwaters of the Bear River. And that was, I mean, it's really something to see that infrastructure up close and personal, and then to see that gorgeous Bear River is just so beautiful. So, that's it.
Kind of trickles right now, right?
No, it was a good flow.
At that point?
Yeah.
Because of,
Yeah,
okay.
yep, and water in the canal, that was fun to see. I climbed up and got on it.
Which is illegal.
Which is illegal.
But nobody had.
You're lucky you're covered by our workers' comp insurance.
Signs.
I know, really.
Yeah, there was a beautiful rock. All I had to do was go up on the rock and go on.
Trevor.
Just plug Rich's, ponds. If you can, build a pond.
Mm-hmm.
It's the second time in 3 years we've had helicopters pulling water out for our neighbors, so. Luckily, it wasn't our ranch, but it was multiple fires this, past week.
Yeah, that's it, yeah, okay, great.
If you need someone to dig it, I'm sure we can find something.
Yeah.
If you get an excavator, I'll come.
Well, we just bought one, didn't we?
I'm not suggesting we give them NIDs.
That also is illegal. These director updates are going off the rails.
I know. Mike has a 35-footer, so you can put it out there.
That's fun.
So I want to just compliment Susan Lauer and Lou DeRose, because the video of the micro ponds and Feeding Crane Farm and Antonio's amazing. Mr. One Take.
You did a great job.
Yeah. He is the spokesman, and he explained it all. He hit every point. It checked every box. And so that was also given to Pamela Grant, who's Congressman Kiley. And, I don't know why that won't get legs, and we'll get that project so each farm and ranch in Nevada and Placer County has a pond.
Is that accessible to the public, that video?
Yeah.
Huh?
Actually, it went viral.
It's on our website.
Yeah, on our Facebook page.
So, homepage, all the way over to news and info, down to YouTube. And it's well over, I mean, first few days was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of views. So it really took off. Yeah.
Really
and then
great.
there's more in there too. There's some prior ones that Lou has done on the South Yuba Canal, other places that just really get a feel for NID and all the hard work. So,
On that general comment, I just think the communication, the website-based information, the outreach to the public has been the quality and acceleration of that effort, your GM newsletters, it's really commendable, and I greatly appreciate everyone's hard work.
Susan and Greg get all the credit.
Susan.
happening.
Susan's doing a wonderful job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really great.
Thank you.
And coming up September 5th, I believe, Economic Resource Council, I'm going to go there and talk about water and economic development. So I think they do serve breakfast, so you are invited. But, you know, it's, because water's the key to everything. And then, have a, somewhere, it's a questionnaire by the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And it's quite it gets into cropland, forest land, pasture land, everything. My comment is, if you want to have a transformational project, micro ponds in every ranch farm. And it checks all the boxes. So, put water there and then everything else happens that's positive. So anyway, we're going to close this session and, we do?
Closed session items.
Nope, I thought you wanted to,
Yeah, I thought you removed that.
we removed that.
There's public comment on closed session items.
There's an opportunity for public comment on items to be considered in closed session. Normally, so this is now an invitation to the public.
Okay, so, for any, okay, I thought that was
What was the change?
zeroed out on one of the agendas I got. Okay, so any public comment on items to be discussed in closed session?
I do not anticipate any reportable action following closed session.
Okay, any public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed and open session is closed.